If you haven't had enough coffee, you won't need any more for the next 20 minutes because I think Jeff Keaton will wake you up. I want to introduce Jeff Keaton from Renewanation. Renewanation. Jeff, come on.
Thank you. I have been in Southern California for a couple days now, and I'm not sure why, but everybody that I have met said, "Where are you from?" And as soon as I say Virginia, they go, "Oh, that's what I thought. You have a Southern accent." And I like to tell them, if you heard some of the people I live around in Virginia speak, you'd think I was from northern Minnesota. I mean, there's some real cool accents down there. But so yes, I am from the South. But you are too. You're from Southern California, but I haven't hardly heard any Southern accents around here. Thank you for the great opportunity to be with you today. I do have the president of Renewanation, Melvin Adams. Where are you at, Melvin? And right there, and the vice president, Ron Gordon, with me today. Great to have those guys. I'm going to mention our national magazine. It's right over here at this table. I'd love for every one of you to take that home. Also, we provided a white paper so you can go into more details about our organization. You can pick that up at the table over there as well. In my first pastorate in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, I was privileged to see many children and teenagers come to know Christ. Most of them came from the homes of low-income families and could not possibly afford private education, private Christian education. We would lead them to Christ, and then we would watch them as they struggled all week at school to keep their head above water. Now, they didn't have the good home life to offset some of that, and so it was a real challenge. We decided to get involved in their public schools as best we could, and so we actually our church led 32 different Christian clubs in Broward County, Florida alone. But it seemed like we were still fighting a losing battle with many of these kids that were coming to Christ. As I watched their lives, I used to dream about the possibility. I thought, what if I could have these kids in my ministry 5 days a week? I only had them for 1 or 2 hours a week, and I thought, what if I could have them for 35 hours a week? It never became a reality in my ministry in South Florida, but in my second pastorate in Virginia, that dream became a reality as we started Parkway Christian Academy, which in reality is the genesis of Renewanation, and we began to watch the hearts and minds and lives of young people be transformed as they received a biblical worldview. These young men and women now are literally changing our world as a result of the biblical worldview that they received through our Christian school. This young man right here, I don't know how we got so far ahead here. I must have bumped it. I'm sorry. This is TJ. Now, I know TJ very well because he happens to be one of my 41 nieces and nephews. He's a nephew, obviously. And if you can't tell, I just want to make sure. TJ spent 9 years in our school developing a biblical worldview. Now, I'll tell you this about TJ. He wasn't a kid that was sitting off in the corner reading biblical worldview textbooks for the fun of it. He basically liked to play basketball, baseball, and he loved pretty girls, and he flirted with way too many of them. But anyhow, TJ graduated in May of 2014 with my daughter Heidi and didn't know exactly what he wanted to do, so he stayed home and decided to attend a local community college, Virginia Western Community College in Roanoke, Virginia. Because I think he had been taught to think critically, he was in an English class with a professor who was not in any way a Christian, and this professor chose to use the method of debate to teach the students in his class. For whatever reason, his teams continuously won debate after debate. Out of 25 students, he was the only one who had been trained with a biblical worldview in a Christian school or homeschool. TJ said one day he finally came to an issue that he knew was going to be a challenge. The professor said, "Today we are going to debate abortion." The professor looked at the 25 students and said, "All right, I want all of you who are for abortion to go over on this side of the room, and those who are against abortion to go on this side of the room." TJ said that 23 students stood up and went over to this side of the room and said, "We're for abortion." TJ was the only student in the class who stood up and said, "I am against abortion." And one other kid said, "I don't know what I'm for, but I'm going on TJ's team because he wins all the debates." TJ said they started to make their case. And he said this, he wasn't calling them stupid, but he said, "I promise you their arguments were just stupid to me." He said they just were saying things like, "Well, if you can't afford it, just get rid of it." And they made their case, and finally the professor said, all right, TJ, it's your turn. Now, we had a very serious biblical worldview integration program at Parkway Christian Academy. We taught our young people what other people believed, and we taught them what we believed as Christians, and we taught them how to defend their faith. And so TJ, he told me, I talked to him about this after his dad told me this story. He said, I didn't remember half the stuff I learned in all those worldview classes, but I remembered enough. And I started to make my case as to why I was against abortion. And he said, I made a number of points that led me to say, if all that I have just said is true, which it was, then in reality, when you abort a child, you are actually murdering that child. Now, that is an aggressive and scary thing to say in a classroom with a very godless professor and 23 kids who do not agree with you. But at the end of that debate, the professor looked at the class and said, and as he always did, and he said, anyone here who has changed their mind, switch sides. So help me God, if you know this kid, he's an honest, wonderful young man. He was shocked when all 23 young men and women came over to his side. And they were literally saying, well, we just didn't know. We hadn't heard those arguments. Here's the bottom line. There is a worldview battle raging for the hearts and minds of our young people. And when we give them the truth and give them a thoroughly biblical worldview, far from being blown over when they get into the real world, they will stand on truth and they can win this culture. In the fall of 2007, God startled me with a vision that I was to help make Christian worldview education available to the masses, not just the few hundred students that we now had at Parkway Christian Academy, and my life has absolutely never been the same. Our vision at Renewanation is pretty simple. Our vision is to transform culture by giving millions of new children Christian worldview education. Can you imagine what could happen in this nation if millions of young men and women understood what TJ understands, had that kind of training so they could stand on their beliefs in this culture? Our mission at Renewanation is to promote the cause of Christian worldview education. We speak and write and have a national magazine, and God is opening amazing doors for this. Our mission is also to support the cause by supporting Christian schools, homeschools, and ministries that are reaching public school students with biblical worldview training. Our mission is to expand the cause by being a catalyst to start new Christian schools, new homeschools, and new ministries that are reaching public school students with biblical worldview training. And here's what we are doing right now. We are working right now to influence the parents and pastors of 10,000 children to enroll them in Christian worldview training programs. We are working to provide scholarships for 1,000 students. We are working to help start 50 new Christian schools right now. And we are working to revitalize 50 existing Christian schools. And last but not least, we are developing a Christian worldview training program for public school students. This program is primarily for churches to give their middle and high school students biblical worldview training. Almost all churches, even if they're not pro-Christian school, they will say to me, our children are being secularized. And so we're developing a program in coordination with Josh Mulvihill, who is a pastor at Grace Church in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. He's also a board member of Renewanation. He has 1,600 children in his church under 6th grade, and he's building a biblical worldview training program for public school students, and we are working with him on this. If children ever needed a biblical worldview, it is today. Our culture is in trouble. And it's partly because, majorly because, of the way young people think. According to Tom Rainier's book, The Millennials, and according to him, and there are different numbers around, but this is what he uses, the millennial group was born between 1980 and 2000 in America. There are 78 million of them. They are the largest generation in American history, by 3 million more of them than baby boomers. They're 15 to 35 years old right now, and they're going to run this country for the next 50 years. Look at the dark numbers that Tom Rainier gives in his book. 80% declare they are not born again. 76% of the millennials do not attend church. 94% cannot affirm their belief in the cardinal doctrines of Christianity. And Rainier gives 60% in his book on same-sex marriage, but the latest numbers I've seen on the millennials is over 70% are in favor of same-sex marriage. The sad reports on this generation are abundantly available. Something fundamental must be done to change the course of our current generation. We believe that education, K through 12 education, is a game changer. All great leaders in history understood the power of education. And let me give you a number that is just mind-boggling when I first heard this and when I first did the math. A child from his kindergarten through senior and high school years will spend 16,000 hours at school. The average child will spend during those same years between 750 and 1,500 hours at church. And we seem to wonder why we're losing so many of our children. I hear a lot of people say, well, it's the methodology in the church. We've got to get up with the times, and there's no doubt there's some truth to that. But I'm going to tell you something. A huge influence upon young people in our culture today is the 16,000 hours of secular training they receive, and we must do something to offset that. We believe K through 12 education greatly influences a child's worldview. 4 years ago, I left the pastorate to work full-time with Renewanation. And we as an organization left the shelter of the church that had mothered us through our first 3 years of existence. Like any young organization, it took us time to get out of the cocoon and learn to fly. But the last 2 years have brought us wonderful new understanding of how to accomplish our vision and new partners to make our vision a reality. This year we have seen God's blessing in a new way as we have already increased. This thing's not moving. As we have already increased our cash contributions by 150% over a year ago to well over $1 million this year. Our assets have grown by over 1,300% this year due to the gift of 800 acres of land where we are currently building out a fully funded biblical worldview training center and camp. And this, in 12 months, we'll have a place that will sleep 200 students and a 4,500 square foot lodge to go along with that. And this amazing gift is just unbelievable. Also comes later with another 1,200 acres and an $8 million trust that has been willed to Renewanation. Our national magazine that I mentioned has become a leading voice for Christian worldview education and is rapidly growing in distribution around the country. In just the last 6 weeks, I have been privileged to speak to the leaders of Christian schools that are training more than 70,000 students. We have given or inspired hundreds of scholarships, and we have worked with numerous Christian schools and just recently fully revitalized our first Christian school in our new revitalization program. We've been privileged over the last few years to start a number of schools and are working with schools around the country to start many more. If you want to look more in depth, look at what we have accomplished in the white paper that we have over there. How can you help us? First of all, evaluate our new school startup and revitalization models. Help us answer the question, should we franchise schools? Is for-profit or nonprofit the better long-term model? And would you consider being a coach in your area of expertise for a local school going through revitalization? Help us promote the cause by introducing us to Christian leaders who might have an affinity for our cause and may be looking to start new schools or revitalize existing schools, and introduce us to people and programs that are currently giving public school students biblical worldview training. We're looking for best practices. As I close, this is what it's all about. This is Tatiana. I met Tatiana when she was going into the 7th grade. I gave an inner city ministry 5 full scholarships to Parkway Christian Academy. I'll never forget the first day I met her. She bounced into the gymnasium, and there were 23 little middle school girls trying out for basketball, and I decided to coach that year because I was afraid my 7th grader wouldn't make the team if the dad wasn't the coach, but anyhow, not exactly. I said to somebody, now who is this little gift from God running around the gym because she's an amazing athlete, and they said, oh, that's one of the Acts 2 scholarships. You know, we didn't give away athletic scholarships, but sometimes when you do what God tells you to do, He blesses you. I found out real quickly, though, I told all the kids that day, you've got to behave, you've got to get good grades, you've got to do all this stuff to be on this basketball team. And I said, if you have a problem with any of that, come see me. Afterwards, Tatiana was the only one left, and she said, Pastor Jeff, I've got just a little bit of a problem in one class. I said, who's your teacher? And I called back to the school, and I said, I've met this little girl, Tatiana. She says she has a little problem in one class. They said, Jeff, she doesn't have a problem in one class. She has a problem in every class. She's beating kids up. She's doing crazy stuff back here. It took us 2 years to win her heart. And the only reason that school did not expel her is because I wouldn't let them expel her. I saw something in that girl's eyes, and I knew she was going to become a somebody. We went through all kinds of trials and tribulations, but as a sophomore in high school, 2 years after she came there, she gave her life to Christ. As a sophomore in high school, she led our basketball team to the state championship. We lost by 7 points, but that kid scored 58 points in the Final Four. I sent her to Liberty Christian Academy for the last 2 years where she was a star on their basketball team. And you see her right there. I was with her Monday. She is on the Liberty University basketball team. I interviewed her this week, and you know what she said to me? First of all, she talked about her relationship with Jesus Christ. And then she said to me, Pastor Jeff, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I am going back to the inner city, and I am going to rescue kids just like I was. That's her passion now. That's what gets me up every day. When you take a child, she says in this interview, I was hopeless. I mean, everybody around me was doing drugs. All my friends were getting pregnant until I came into this Christian school and they taught me the love of Christ and they gave me a biblical worldview. And she's going to go out and change the world. That's why I get up every day, because when we take young people, not just from the inner city, but from churches and Christian homes, and we give them a biblical worldview, they will have a purpose in life and they will change the world. Thank you so much for your time today.
Wow. Let's go ahead and pray for Jeff and for Renewanation. Father, thank you that someone like Jeff and Melvin have been given your vision to see kids get a Christian worldview at an early age. Lord, we can attest to how much that is needed, but most of us, that's all we do is we attest to it. We don't do something, and we just praise you for giving them the vision and the desire and all that they need, Lord, to get out and do that. We pray that you would continue to open the right doors for them. So we just thank you for that. Thank you for their ministry, and pray that you would bless it. We lift this up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Take a